So we're staying in Australia. We're moving though to a different type of management, different type of cow as well as management. We're going to talk about carryover cows and management and dealings with carryover cows, something that we definitely have here in Ireland as well. The floor is yours.
No worries. Thank you very much, Mary. This was part of an honours project I did through the University of Adelaide, breaking down some data that we collected from some of our dairies. So it may seem a little boring to some people, but I can assure you after a year of it, I had a little bit better handling of what was going on. So initially what we need to do is define what an actual carryover cow is. In our particular area in Australia, we have a generally seasonal calving, so predominantly autumn or predominantly spring calving. Our farms have now basically split calving. So what we would define as a carryover is a cow that calved in autumn. She doesn't get in calf with her mating group, and she's carried over to the next mating group, mated then, and hopefully falls pregnant then. So ideally, in an ideal world, we'd like to have our cows calving 365 days apart. These cows, we have routinely cows that are calving 1.5 years in between calvings, and some, when we've been preg testing cows are 900 days in milk and still not in calf. So they're what we would term a carryover. So what we wanted to investigate was the reproductive data initially, and use the figures that the in-calf study in Australia had used, but that proved a little bit difficult just due to data, and also the milk production data, because the farms that we selected had very good computer recording. They also herd recorded. In Australia at the moment there's been a big drop-off in herd recording, so by that meaning most farms used to probably herd record and take milk samples every 2 months. Now it's probably down to 2 or 3 times a year. So the data's not quite as good as it used to be. But that would measure your literage, butterfat percentage, protein percentage, cell count. So we use that data as well. Our farms are a little bit better than Mike's, a little bit higher stocking rate than the northern of Australia. But predominantly all our farms in this study, they were all irrigated farms, all of them supplementary fed with usually in the bale of anywhere from 4 to 12 kilos of grain or a grain mix in the bale, and then would have, they'd also have silage as well. And predominantly, 3 of the farms were predominantly Holstein based, and 2 had Aussie Reds and Swedish Reds, Danish Reds. So we collected all this data from these farms. We also, like in reproductive data, we selected calving dates, mating dates, dry-off dates, and the next calving date. And this was done over a couple of years of records. So there were some difficulties dragging data out of the farms, which I think everyone who's done that sort of work has really struggled with getting good information out of computer systems. So the main systems, 3 of our farms working off dairy data, 1 off dairy data, 1 off Maestro and 1 off Dairy ID. So what did we actually find? This is a fairly, probably the biggest farm in the study. This one here, they were milking about 2,000 cows. So that's an irrigated farm, and when it stops raining in Australia, we definitely don't grow any grass. So this is not necessarily the number of cows that were actually recorded on these farms, but the actual points of data that we collected off the farm. So they ranged in size from a 2,000 cow farm down to our smallest farm was a 400 cow farm. So you can see we've got a fair percentage of extended lactation cows, and it does vary between farms depending on selection criteria on the farm. So roughly we're looking at a little bit less than 10% of the cows were extended lactation cows, and that varied between farms. Some farms, you can see this farm here, had a lower level of carryover cows. Now, the things we were trying to actually pull out of the data, some of the things were very difficult to get out. We couldn't get sort of a lot of the in-calf figures out of it. The interesting things we did find and things we can have some influence over is our waiting period was generally a lot longer in our extended lactation cows. So you would assume that with some treatments there that we may be able to pull some of these extended lactation cows back into a normal lactation. Our normal mating period on these farms was all AI, and it'd generally be about 9 weeks for each mating period. So you have a 9-week autumn mating, 9-week spring mating. Number of services was a little bit higher in your carryover cows as well, but specifically looking at days open, carryover cows blow everything else away. With regards to normal returns, this was just based on the number of days in between heat events. So you can see the extended lactation or carryover cows had a lot more, there's a lot more matings, so they've been mated more times, a lot longer or a lot more irregular heats, so either short returns being less than 18 days in between matings and longer returns over 25 days between matings. So all these figures were significant. We all know they're reproductively poorer, and then we sort of moved on to the production findings after that. The other thing, our submission rates definitely lower in our extended lactation or carryover cows, and this one's really a no-brainer. It's amazing that actually isn't more definite. So what we then did was used all the milk production figures and calculated what a normal cow, these ones here, are producing over a 305-day lactation, and that's a daily litre count. This one here is a daily litre count for extended lactation cows. So we can see we've got higher daily production over the lactation in our normal cows. What we then did was break it down into actual lactation numbers. So you can see up in our 1-year-old or our first lactation heifers, if they did do an extended lactation, it was actually beneficial. Most of the others, it's actually getting back to being fairly even. Now this may be because cows have aborted and had a longer lactation, or they could just be poor production cows. But no farmer really wants to sell a cow when they're still producing, in our situation, over 20 litres of milk. Oh, I'll go back and I'll give you a warning. This is a little bit busy, this next slide, or as one of our friends in Ireland would say, it's going to get a bit lively. So don't get too confused here, it's just a lot of numbers, but what we did was created a hypothetical cow model. So if we look at our top line, this is a cow that calves the same day every year. It has a 305-day lactation. So what we did was we tried to create a model to then fit in these figures off here and work out what the lifetime milk production would be for a cow. So if we look at something like this cow here, so she's had a long lactation as a heifer, this one, sorry, long lactation as a heifer, long lactation as a probably 3 or 4-year-old, and then gone back to being normal lactation. So the 182 days is basically because we had a cow lifetime. She couldn't exist any longer than a certain number of days milking, which was limited by these numbers up the top here. So she couldn't lactate any longer than that hypothetical first cow. So what we ended up coming with is this stuff here is the same as that last slide. What I'd like you to look at is this over here. So this is your lifetime milk production of the cows. If you had a cow that calved 365 days apart every year and had normal lactations, that's going to be her lifetime milk production according to the figures that we extracted from our farms. The next closest were these two here. So you can see we're getting a pretty dramatic drop of about 7,000 litres over a lifetime, which at the moment, in an Australian situation, you're probably looking at around maybe 30 or up to 30 cents a litre. So you've got $2,100 over a lifetime that this cow is going to be better than any of her carryover mates. So what does cause the carryover lactations? There's many different reasons. Everyone tends to blame the North American genotype. I know Jacob definitely blames that, but there's a lot of reasons. Probably our biggest reason is selection. People just like those cows to keep on keeping on in the herd. What can we do? Improve transition management on a lot of our farms. These programs are being rolled out by DA in Australia. Treating your calving problems. Anestrus cows, I think, could be a big improvement. Selecting for better daughter fertility is a real push in Australia now. If we can get the farmers, like Mike was saying before, if we can actually get the farmers to understand that cost of lost production, I think we can actually help them make that decision and grow bigger and better heifers. They're our main things that we've got handled, or that we can actually improve and reduce the number of carryover and extended lactation cows. I'd like to thank those 5 dairies from the southeast of South Australia for their data and help during the year, and also especially to Dr. Kiro Petrovsky, wherever Kiro is, for all his data analysis. That was something that I had nothing to do with, as far as I understand it slightly, but Kiro was the brains behind that. So Kiro was very, very helpful in this and very supportive. Any questions? That's right, isn't it, Ray?
Thank you very much, and also thank you very much for keeping on time. Yes, you're allowed to applaud. We have time for one question. There's a lot of people moving, but are they moving to mics? They're not moving to mics. I have a question. Did I see it correctly that a cow in a larger herd, your super herd, basically had more carryover cows than the smaller? You had the smallest herd was like there was an 870, 73. So you said selection is one of the main factors.
Yeah.
But from that, I would say labour to actually get her back in calf might actually have to do with it as well.
That's not actually cows. That's
observations.
Like data, observations from those herds. So yes, it probably is labour to an extent. I mean, there's always the issues with heat detection and AI and all those sort of things as you move into bigger herds. That can become an issue. Our bigger herds have generally got a pretty good handle on the observation of heat. So yeah, it really is an individual farm thing. Yep.
Fair enough. Sorry, can you grab the mic behind you, please?
There's a mic right behind you, Peter.
Thank you. It was a very, very good presentation. Now, the arguments that are often put forth by people that are employing extended lactations are that there are all the factors that come into the additional costs associated with getting cows in calf. There's mortality risks around calving. There's more, the inseminations, and so you can move to a lower cost model by having extended lactations. Do you feel that this could be the case?
Probably short-term cash flow-wise, yeah, it's probably easier, I reckon, Peter. It's really hard. I mean, I think in our situation, you'd get some more value out of those cows by having an extended lactation, but then you've got less replacements because you've got less heifer replacements. It starts a bit of a downward spiral that if you keep keeping these cows, then you end up with more of them and more of them. And I mean, by the milk production figures, it shows that it's really not beneficial to actually have them. Yeah, I don't know, would you find the same in your area?
Oh yeah, I can't see a great reason to be keeping them. But would you then be saying, are you becoming harsher and harsher on culling those cows if they're not in calf?
Yeah, what our recommendation to people would be is put your cut-off for your litrage production for those cows higher if they don't actually make it. So instead of being 15 litres per day, make it 25, because then you're keeping those cows that are supposedly the really good high production cows, and the other ones that are just bludging along, they get converted into their true destiny.
Right, thank you.
Okay, guys, we have to
No
leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.